look at the construction of the ear. So what I'd like to do first is have you follow along each of these steps and just draw your own little ear drawing to the side here. So in step 1, we basically get the basic outer shape of the ear, breaking the curve down into angled straight lines to really get like the articulation of the ear, noticing that the ear is wider at the top and narrower at the bottom. And then in step 2, we start to kind of get that, what's called the helix, the little rim around the ear set in. Again, still breaking the curves down into angled straight lines, which just gives it more solidity. In step 3, we start to kind of extend that line of the helix down and get the little flap that is right in front of the ear, sort of on the jaw, that kind of connects the ear onto the jaw. And then in step 4, we just kind of extend some of these around. Step 5, we're starting to kind of describe the concha, which is that hollowed out central part of the ear that sort of scoops inwards. And then in step 6, we're kind of getting the definition to this kind of curving. I like to think of this as kind of a curving Y shape, this antihelix. It looks kind of complicated, but if we kind of think of it as like a curving Y shape, it sort of helps simplify matters a little bit more. So looking at the basic proportions of the ear, you can see that there's basically 1/3 in this upper portion, and then in this concha, the scooped out part, it's another 1/3 vertically, and then for the lobe, it's about another 1/3 proportionally. In terms of the anatomy, we talked about the antihelix, that curving Y shape in the ear. There's also the helix, which is the kind of rim around the ear. We've got the concha, which is that scooped out inner central part of the ear. And the anterior notch, that little flap, little triangular flap that sits right in front of the ear and connects onto the jaw. And then we've got the lobule or the earlobe, which sort of flops down at the bottom of the ear. We've also got the intertragic notch, which kind of scoops around from the anterior notch into the concha. And so looking at, this is a 3/4 view of the ear. So this is kind of the profile, if you were doing a profile face, the ear, we're looking straight on at the ear. This is like we've sort of rotated the face a little bit, so now it's a 3/4 view. And you can see that the helix kind of forms back and kind of overlaps onto itself to create that sense of this part being in front of this part. This gets a little narrower since it's going back in space. Again, we're using angled straight lines to kind of define those curves, curving it out a little bit at the end, but keeping that sense of structure to the ear that you kind of gain from breaking the ear into the angled straight lines. It sort of prevents it from looking like a big Ernie ear and just gives it more structure and more definition. And then we've got the sort of thinning down portion of the antihelix, that kind of curving Y shape. It's like receding a little bit, so it's a bit narrower. We've got the concha, we've got the anterior notch that kind of connects onto the face. As we look at the front, this is a front view of the face, we just sort of see a sliver of the ear. It's really setting back into space. So these lines of the helix are kind of receding together. They're getting narrower together as they go back into space. It kind of overlaps onto itself and continues to get narrower and narrower. Again, we're using angled straight lines to define the structure of the ear. We've got the concha, we've got the anterior notch, that very thin little sliver of the curving Y shape. Still thinking about the proportions, the 3 equal thirds vertically that kind of make up the proportions of the ear. From this 3/4 back view, there's actually this piece of cartilage covered by skin that kind of sticks out from the back of the head that makes the upper portion of the ear stick out a little further than the bottom portion of the ear. And then we've got the helix wrapping around. Now we're looking at the back side of it, still using angled straight lines to kind of break that down. We're really looking at like the side edge of the helix now, so not like the front of it, but the kind of side of the ear, and it kind of wraps around and kind of becomes the side plane of the lobe. And we just see a little indication of the lobe and a little bit of the sort of whole of the ear. And then from the full back view, the helix kind of forms a bit of an S curve as it rolls around and eventually becomes the lobe of the ear. And again, we've got that piece of cartilage covered by skin that sticks out from the ear at the top, and it gets a little closer in on the ear, just a little tighter as it gets towards the bottom. And so the ear is mostly made up of cartilage covered by skin, and the cartilage continues to grow as we age. And also in terms of the placement of the ear, if you were to take like a horizontal plumb line, just a horizontal line, when the head is facing straight, like the chin's not a little bit down or the chin's not up, it's just a neutral sort of position, you could sort of extend a line horizontally from the eyebrow back, and that'll take you to the placement of the top of the ear. And you could extend a line horizontally from the bottom of the nose, and that'll take you to the bottom of the ear. So that can help with placement. And then also just remember that the ear sits at a slight angle. It's not straight up and down on the head, and it actually mirrors the angle of the jaw. So I hope that helps you better understand the construction of the ear.